the 6 weighted votes. So my concern right now is we've got a census that's going to take place. Why can't we wait for that? Can we table this till then? And the city of Salinas, if anybody's going to get more weighted votes, it should be us.
Mr. Chairman, I think Castroville, now that I think you're entitled to 2 votes now that you merged with Moss Landing. So we take a look at this. We all take a look at this. I think we're going to have some modifications after 50 years. So I think we're going to have to take a long look at it and wait till after the census.
Chair Stefani, if I could. So, I think that there is a relevant point to make in regards to other districts receiving more or less votes depending upon other factors, including the census. But I don't think that's what's in front of us now at this point. And I don't think that it's fair or equitable to tell a district that's a member of our JPA that they're not entitled to their seats based off of facts that we have in front of us now, as opposed to kicking the can down the road and potentially impacting what they're entitled to in regards to the people that they represent within the region. So I think we still need to have a deeper conversation about this specific topic so that we can better determine how we can make a decision regarding whether the additional vote is needed.
I agree.
Through the chair. So this is Tom Moore. Of course, the JPA, the Joint Powers Agreement, is a contract. And the current terms of the contract have that table that Chaito displayed for us. So we are just asking that that contract be honored. The change in population from our perspective occurred last July when we annexed the Ord community into our service area. So we feel as though we've actually been entitled since last July to the 3rd vote, but it's taken a while to get the information out of the Department of Finance to provide clear demonstration of this. But certainly there hasn't been since last July some increase in population between Central Marina and the Ord community of 10,000 people. So whatever is true today was certainly true last July. What's before us today is not a modification to the contract in terms of who else, whether that table should be changed or not. I think we'd be violating the Brown Act if we even made an attempt to discuss that, other than for someone to say, if you want, that we want to see that discussed at some point in the future. Thank you.
I'd like to, John, do we have to put up our hands, or do we just ask you the chair, just as a point of order? John.
John, what's the best way to raise their hands? Is there a raise hands function under participants?
Yes, there is.
If you click under participants, it opens up a screen off to your on your right side, and there's a place to raise your hand there, or you could raise your hand and wave it and hope that Chai or the chair.
And then right now we have John Phillips, John Gagliotti, Jason Campbell, who have all raised their hand. And
okay, well, I'll go. So, I mean, I think, Tyler kind of hit on the point in terms of the idea of fair and equitable. I think that Marina raises an interesting, an interesting point. I'll say this, is that just reading some of the comment letters, their analysis is in dispute. I think the most fair and equitable way to do this is to have staff basically do an audit for all of our jurisdictions all at the same time, and then make that call at the same time, as opposed to any one jurisdiction reviewing any one jurisdiction's potential adding or even subtracting of votes.
Okay, great. Thanks, John. Jason.
Thank you, Chair. I'm having trouble processing what the question is here. I looked at the chart, and it basically is it's pretty straightforward, not open to interpretation. If the number of votes is based on population, and the way to determine the population is either through the most recent census or the Department of Finance, whichever can give you the most up-to-date information. So, I mean, it's not. I would like to say it's a binary choice, but it's actually not even a choice. It's statistics here. If the population is over 25,000, you get 3 votes. If it's under 25,000, you don't get those 3 votes. I think it's pretty straightforward. It's part of our bylaws here, and changing our bylaws right now is obviously not on the table.
Okay, thank you, Jason. John Phillips.
Yeah, I don't think it's that straightforward. I would refer everybody to look at the analysis that was done by the city of Salinas that was submitted. So I agree with Mr. Gagliotti that we ought to put the matter over, have an audit done by the entire our staff, and move on. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Tyler, you're up.
Yeah, I guess like my point is, I don't think it's still clear in regards to the last 2 comments that were made. I think that there's relevant points perhaps in regard to the allocation of weighted votes from other districts. And I think that's a fair conversation for this decision-making body to take up and look at. I just don't see how we can allow something that affects one of the other members, how we can allow that to affect a decision that's on the table in front of us now. So if Salinas came to this conversation, they had it on the agenda for us to consider an increase to their allocation of weighted votes on this board. And then I came to the meeting and I said, well, no, I think that in Monterey, we have this thing going on, so maybe we hold off on that until you look at Monterey too. I just think that I take issue with that. And then I think I just need clarification around the process. Like, does staff normally update this without it coming in front of the board, or anytime there's a change in allocation, it comes in front of the board?
Okay, Tyler, from my knowledge, I've been on the board for 11, 12 years. It's never been changed.
No.
I don't think the document has been changed for 40 years.
No,
It hasn't.
So does that mean that staff normally does it, or does it normally come to the board for us to make the change?
We brought it to the board when we annexed Moss Landing and tried to survive with Moss Landing's vote. And we were told by staff and by Rob that it would take a unanimous vote for us to get Moss Landing's vote.
Wait, let me clarify that. When it wasn't unanimous, it didn't require a unanimous vote to get the votes. The question was that Castroville had incorporated and consolidated Moss Landing into Castroville. So the Moss Landing entity disappeared. It was no longer a separate public entity. And so the question was, and Juan will recall this, Stoltz will recall this because we had long discussions about it with regard to whether the question was whether they could keep their one vote and also keep a single vote, the one vote that Moss Landing had. Whereas under the population, even when you combine the population of both Moss Landing, which is then included in Castroville, it still was under that figure that only allowed one vote. The issue relative to what would require a unanimous vote was that it would, in order to accomplish something different and keep Moss Landing as an entity, it would require an amendment to the Joint Powers Agreement. An amendment to the Joint Powers Agreement does require, as Ron just indicated, that requires a unanimous vote. And it also then requires the certification of each of the members. So that was the issue back at the Moss Landing issue. Relative to if I could just mention, relative to how these matters of population have been considered in the past, they haven't been considered for a long, long time. Shai and I were trying to look back. I think the only time that we've had situations before is that when there's actually been a census change, which is a decennial, it happens every 10 years, and some entity might have appeared, and I have no recollection of exactly when it may have occurred, when there have been any changes. They would then present the US Census report, or if there is an alternate, is the Department of Finance most recent estimate. And that is then would have been presented to the board and say, here's this information. And the staff, this seems to be very clear, and staff reports at this point, this entity would be entitled to an additional vote. That's how it probably would have been done if we could establish when it's been done in the past. This was a little bit different situation because it required a great deal of, required a considerable amount of considering different figures, different census figures, different maps, etc. Paul and I looked at them long and hard, and we talked to Tom about it. We were not able to reach a conclusion where we fully understood what the issue was. Now, when it was submitted shortly after midnight, the day that the packet went out, the packet was improved, and so it has additional information that Paul and I never saw prior to the time it was put on the agenda. So that's something. The issue now is for you to consider, and Rena Coast might be given, if you wish, be given the opportunity to explain it fuller, more than maybe that Tom has already done. And then the decision is for the board side, are the facts and information sufficient to satisfy you that it's clear that they have this additional population and are entitled to an additional vote, or if it's not clear, then it's not approved, or you take some third alternative act. Those seem to be the options.
Thank you, Rob.
Hey, Ron, I did want to point out that we have public comment awaiting as well after this.
Okay. I guess just a question for Rob and Paul. The Monterey County Sanitation District, have they annexed to that? Is this area?
Thanks. That's a good question, Ron. I raised that question with Tom relative today, whether because that's the Monterey Regional County Sanitation District is the district that the agency maintains to establish the boundaries. I raised that question to Tom. Tom, you had a map. Tom sent back to me earlier today a map from the municipal service review done by LAFCO, and that map, as I say, I just saw it late this afternoon. That map would appear to show that the boundaries of the MRCSD of the district, the boundaries of the agency, there's the map, are sufficient. That map would appear to indicate. Can you see my person?
Yeah.
That would indicate this is Seaside. This is Marina up here. I'm sorry. And the what we're talking about, the annexation, is this area out here of former Fort Ord. What's been excluded from the Marina Coast issue is everything that's within the city of. They also annexed this. They had that question of whether they also annexed what is a portion of the city of Seaside that's in the former Fort Ord. That is annexed, but those areas were not included in the census figures that they deducted. So this, to answer your question, Ron, this would appear to show that the district, this is the boundary back in, it's at 2000, I can't see the figure down below at the bottom, Tom. You could run it up, there you are, 2010. Anyway, that's the answer to that question, Ron.
Well, what's our process at Monterey One Water when someone wants to annex? I mean, don't we have to approve it?
Well, this apparently, this looks like this was an annexation. Again, I can't see that figure, Tom, on the map down at the bottom. Can you run it up a bit? This would show the point that's being made by Marina Coast, or the point that Tom made to me. See, look, it says approved change in 2010, map produced in 2012. So this was all done before. Tom's point, I believe, and Tom can make his own point, is that this area was annexed to the district boundaries prior to when Marina Coast annexed these areas to Marina Coast.
Okay.
That,
All right.
Rob's analysis is correct.
Okay. I see everybody's hand up.
Yeah, so this is John, and through the chair. I mean,
Okay.
I think this kind of then flies in the face of kind of, Director Campbell's point is that it's not binary, and I think that this requires further review. And I think that this is where kind of the letter from Salinas today, it goes into the potential dispute. I mean, I think that needs to be independently verified, and it's because Marina Coast District is so complex. It's not, on a single border. So again, with all due respect, I mean, I think that one, we should have Marina's analysis independently verified. And then I think we should have staff, we should direct staff to do a full audit of all of ours and come up with kind of a standardized process.
I agree. This is Gloria.
Okay, thank you, Gloria. John, okay, we got John Phillips, your hand still up. You got anything?
No, I wasn't smart enough to take my hand down.
All righty. Mary Ann? Mary Ann, do you have a comment?
Okay, yeah, just that, I believe back in February, the subject was brought up by Director Moore, and that we would be looking at this after the 2020 census came out.
Okay.
It could be people who are
So,
currently not sheltered.
I'm sorry. So, and then with this letter from the city of Salinas, it looks like they're requesting that we wait for the 2020 census to be completed, and where they could compile the population of all the jurisdictions.
That's right.
Okay, that's my comment.
Okay, thank you, Mary Ann. Tom Moore, you still got your hand up?
I do indeed. So,
Go ahead.
first of all, just provide some counter argument. If, for instance, you had contracted with someone to purchase their car and they promised that they would pay you on Friday, that they would deliver the car to you on Friday after you had given them the money, and come Friday, they said to, well, I don't want to give you our car today because I want to wait until I've had the car repainted and the interior cleaned. So even though you paid me your money, I'm going to deliver the car to you a year from now. So Marina Coast is just not interested in waiting around till the results of the 2020 census to get what is due Marina Coast, what we believe we have demonstrated is due to Marina Coast under the existing JPA contract. So just in the interest of not being here all night, I will move approval of the recognition of a third vote for Marina, and we'll see if it gets a second.
I'll second.
It's got to go out to public comment, right? I mean, we still need public comment on this.
Right.
You can get public comment before or after the motion.
Right. We can get a
So
second.
was there a second?
I'll second just for the sake of the conversation. And if I could, Chair, I just saw a note from a member in the public, and they identified there's quite a bit of background noise that is very distracting, and asking if we can please consider muting yourself if you are not speaking. And I do see Gloria's thing lighting up quite often. I think it's coming from Gloria's phone. So I'm not sure if Gloria, if you have the ability. Oh, yeah, she muted. Perfect.
Okay. So we got a motion and a second. So let's just take it out to the public now before we vote.
And then Ron, we did have public comment letters come in.
Right.
And then I can actually share my screen. These are the letters that came in for this item. We had about 5 of them come in. And then there are members of the public that also want to speak.
Okay.
So now I'm going to go ahead and call on each person one by one. There's about 9 people that want to speak.
All right, good.
I'll go down the line. I'm going to go ahead and unmute Rick Aldinger. And how many minutes do they have, Ron, to speak?
2 minutes.
Mr. Aldinger, you have 2 minutes to speak.
Thank you. And I just want to say that changing the way voting would be equitable and make sense if and only if a census of all the jurisdiction is sure the proper update based on accurate population numbers to update one member prior to any given vote without having the opportunity to assess their population would not be appropriate. To Mr. Williamson's comments, I would say, you know, he pointed out, I think accurately that it disallowing Marina Coast to have their weighting changed would be fair to them. And I would counter that by saying that doing it only for Marina Coast and not the others would be unfair to everyone else in that case. Thank you.
Okay.
The next person to speak is Rudy Fisher.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mr. Fisher.
Thank you, Chai. Basically, I don't really have a comment on this. I mean, I agree with the fairness part of it, but I have a question because I know that Marina Coast Water District annexed part of Seaside's area as a service area. But does that mean that Seaside loses that representation of those people, and does that affect their vote? In other words, does their vote go down because they lost some people to Marina Coast Water District? That's it. Good seeing you guys.
Thank you, Rudy.
And the next person is Rick here. Maybe go ahead and unmute your microphone. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. I'm speaking on behalf of the association. We have a lot of concerns of the timing of this coming up in front of a major vote later on your agenda. But more importantly, the census is ongoing right now. You will have updated, accurate information, not estimates, but accurate information coming up in the not so distant future. I agree, you need to be looking at all of them, and to act now when you've already heard staff has had limited time to review the analysis. The city of Salinas contests the analysis. It is not an open and shut case. I think it needs to be heard. I think Marina Coast is in their rights to ask for it. But there needs to be time to review the information and get accurate information. And with the census right here, it's kind of crazy to do this in advance of that in any event. And I would agree, you need to look at everyone's at that time. Maybe some go up and some go down. But this is not the night to do it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Chai.
And the next person it's a phone. If you can please say your name. It's a Galaxy J7V. I'm going to go ahead and unmute your microphone. Please state your name for the record. You know, I'm not able to unmute him. I'm actually going to come back. Oh, actually, go ahead. It's a Galaxy J7 phone. Do you have a public comment? We can come back, Ron. We'll skip.
Come back, yeah.
Actually, I'm sorry, Bill Camp. Mr. Camp, you have 2 minutes. I'm not sure why we're having a little bit of technical difficulty.
Okay.
Could it be that we haven't muted Mr. Brewer first prior to unmuting Bill Camp?
Mr. Who, I'm sorry?
You still have Rick Ewer.
Am I unmuted now?
Mr. Camp?
Yes.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead with your public comment.
Okay. Did you hear anything so far?
No.
I'm sorry. This item kind of brought to mind for me a very different context question. And I was looking at the original JPA agreement from 1972, done on a typewriter before PCs and word processing. But more to the point, since 1972, the charter of the PCA has emerged in a very, very substantial way. It's no longer primarily treatment of wastewater, but there are additional sources contributing. There's product water sold to jurisdictions. And then I looked at the EIR Appendix 6, and the question that goes through my mind is, should there be some consideration to additional factors for the basis of representation? And in those charts in Appendix R, what we see is a lot of water and operational responsibility for the Salinas Valley, a lot for the Seaside Basin, and a very thin sliver for Marina Coast Water District. And so the proposal may be consistent with a very antiquated JPA agreement, but I would certainly urge this board in the process of confirming the numbers, should you end up doing that, also considering what the basis of representation should be. Some examples, by the way: FORA apportioned seats based on land area, it appears. The Regional Water Authority set weighted votes based on water usage and bill membership. And Measure X, different context, but a TAMSI measure for road maintenance used both population and lane miles as the fund's allocation key. What should the key be, given the amount of operational activity that is devoted to each of the jurisdictions for this organization? And I would urge that your discussion, should you charter a group to look at this, would include that question as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Now going to go down to Brian McCarthy. Mr. McCarthy, go ahead.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Growing up in the District of Columbia, I'm all too familiar with the concept of taxation without representation. It's kind of a problem similar to what you're looking at now, and that the governing documents didn't quite anticipate what the future would look like. In your scenario, the solution seems very simple and even mandated by the JPA. You should either accept or deny the data that has been provided to you showing that Marina has a population over 25,000. And I recommend you accept this undisputable proof and act as you are required to under the JPA. As Williamson and Moore pointed out, going forward, I think you have a lot of decisions in the future. And what I'm likely to support is that you increase the population metrics in your table by some inflationary number across the board. It seems most fair without having crunched the numbers to see what that would mean to cities I might live and work in. So yes, a lot of things to discuss in the future, but that's not what is before you now. What's before you now is following the existing JPA and not deciding you want to change the rules to fit your own particular interest. Mr. Shudo mentioned that this is not new business to the board and has been brought up several times. So I'm a little confused why the board is so surprised at hearing this. I think you're legally required to act appropriately and approve the third vote for the city of Marina. The population numbers to me don't even appear close. So in other words, they're not on the edge. So I'm concerned that your desire to question the numbers is solely intended to deprive Marina of the votes that are due to them. Census numbers alone are not required under the existing JPA, and due to COVID-19, census numbers are being delayed. As part of any motion you discuss, I would hope specifically you would discuss on whether you agree with the numbers provided to you or not. And I hope that you move to approve Marina's third vote. Thank you very much.
Now we're going to go down to, we're going to try the Galaxy J7V phone one more time. I'm going to
Okay.
go ahead and mute you. Go ahead. I'm not sure why that one's not
Can you
working.
hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, it's Eric from Castroville's Community Services District. I'm a little technical difficulty. I was just listening to the arguments. I've seen the letter from Salinas. I think it'd be unfair to the rest of the members to just drop this vote in right before a critical vote coming up. As far as the census goes, it still shows Castroville like below 7,000, which we have people living in garages, parked on driveways, parked in yards. I guarantee we're well over 8,000 or 9,000, but they still show us at 52,000 median income, household income, where a recent study we did shows we're severely disadvantaged at 32,000. So that's, I think it's worth looking at each of the agencies. To be fair, if we're going to vote on something that's critical, then everybody should have an equal share of the pie, and not like all of a sudden let Marina come in and get an extra vote trying to, and they're probably entitled to it, but it's not fair to Salinas, not fair to Castroville. I mean, we could look at numbers across the board and find out everything changes. The next item 7C is coming up, and this could make a difference on that for Salinas. 160,000 people, they'll almost outweigh the rest of all of us. I think it's only fair that this agency would have a special project just to make sure that everybody's fair. If they review the JPA, get it all dialed in, that would be proper. But to have it dropped in like this and just looking at one member, not the rest, is I think it would be unfair. So there's a letter in the packet that already addresses that. So thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you.
Now we're going to go to cell number ending in 0312. I'm going to go ahead and unmute your microphone. Please state your name for the record.
Margaret Ann Coppernoll. Good evening. I very much admire the work that this board has accomplished. I would like to say that I vote, and I would like to express my support for Marina Coast Water District, in that fairness and justice seems to be on their side, according to section 3.04 of the JPA. So I tend to want to respect legal documents that are in place. I think that there was some time before the meeting took place to look into some of the matters that have been raised, and I certainly respect and want fairness and justice for everybody, because there are neighbors there that are affected, and we love them all, definitely love them all. But I personally know that Marina has now approximately 33,000 that are being served by the Marina Coast Water District. That's clearly less than 50,000. But, I can't influence your decision. I just want to weigh in saying that I would like to see fairness and respect for the law. If the agreement was made in the past, then I think it's only fair to give that extra vote to Marina Coast Water District, because the residents of that area need to have proper representation, fair representation, according to the population in Marina. So no matter what you decide, I still love you guys, and thank you for letting me have a comment this evening.
Oh, thank you.
And now we are going to go to Susan Schiavone. I'm going to go ahead and unmute your microphone.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Yes. Oh, thank you. I just wanted to make a couple of points. If this is a problem voting on this before you vote on the SEIR, if you can move it down on the agenda, that would solve one issue someone had. Also, if this has been being discussed, it's not new information. And to try to have an audit done by M1 of every district, that seems rather expensive. And I'm wondering if, in fact, Marina Coast had to pay for their reports and everything they had to do, then if it should be on each district to do that, if that's the kind of study they want to have in order to present it under the JPA contract. I think the contract should be honored, frankly. It's what you have now. And if LAFCO and the Department of Finance are not credible, then who is? It makes me wonder what the questioning is about. And then the other option is that the census results will not be available for at least 9 months to 1 year. And that represents another whole year of Marina Coast not having its JPA contract honored. So those were my comments. Thank you. I hope you will go ahead and vote for it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then if there's members of the public that are only via phone, we ask that you press *9 on your phone. That'll raise your hand and let me know that you want to speak. We're now going to go to M. Zefferman. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I'm Matt Zefferman. I'm on the Marina Coast Water District Board, but I'm also just today talking to you as a private citizen. Yeah, reading this JPIA, which I read last week when this item first came up, it seems pretty clear what you're supposed to do today. It says, for the purpose of determining the population of a city, district, agency, or represented county area, the agency shall, and that says shall, consider the last official United States Census or the California Finance Department population estimate, whichever is more recent. It doesn't say that you should consider the next census to be conducted. It doesn't say that the population will be determined after the Monterey One Water staff does a assessment of all of the different districts. It says, basically the last census to be conducted or the California Finance Department population estimate. Marina Coast went out and proactively obtained that estimate. I think that any jurisdiction that wants to go out and obtain that estimate can do that. And I think the numbers are pretty clear. It also doesn't say, not that this cannot be considered until after all of the potentially contentious votes are taken. It's pretty clear what you as an agency should do by the contract, and I think you should honor it. And I submitted a letter basically saying that our new members of our district deserve to be represented on your board because they are already paying members, and I think that's true for everyone from every jurisdiction. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
And now I'm going to go ahead and unmute Norm Groot's phone.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mr. Groot.
Thank you, and good evening, directors. I appreciate the time to make comment on this, and I'm going to speak in opposition to taking any action on this until a full, complete due diligence is done by the staff and presented to this board. You really need to do a process check on this and review the jurisdictional allocations. By your own admission, they've not been done for many years, and much of the info that you're receiving here now is new and has not been presented to your board before or been vetted. You need to establish a process to review all the jurisdictional allocations and then come to a consensus on how to handle that. Since you don't have a process in place, you should really consider doing this for all. And I would urge that you wait for the census, since that is the official count that the US government uses for all programs and allocations for funding. And it's fair to all jurisdictions to be reviewed at that time. So I ask for your opposition and not taking any action on this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to go to PBB. Please state your name for the record.
Paul Bruno, Monterey. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Paul.
Good evening. I just wanted to say that, this kind of leaves the public with a feeling that, games are being played. I think the controversy here, shows that probably do need to study this more. Because, what we have in front of us, I think is a little bit incomplete. But the real question I have is the fairness to the others, where there's not a systematic process. You're going to do a onesie twosie sort of approach to how we run the district. If that's how it's done, I think ultimately people will lose confidence in this district. So I think you really need to hold off until you put a process in place that can be fairly applied. It shouldn't be just, come in one day, change it here, change it there. It doesn't seem right. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And now, Libby Downey, I'm going to go ahead and unmute your microphone. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. I would just like to say a couple of things. This isn't a new issue. All of you have known for a long time that FORA has voted for Marina Coast to take over the water issues at Fort Ord. So it's not fair to say, oh my goodness, we didn't know about this, or this is unusual. It follows your guidelines. It's to me, very clear that if you have a certain population, that's your weighted vote. I feel like it's kicking the can down the road and trying to not deal with this issue. And it feels to me like it's more political than it is looking in a straightforward manner at what should be recognized. I think down the road, it's a great idea if you check and go through all of this and look at all of the different cities and population after the census. That's probably due, and it's time for that to be done. But I don't think that should affect the fact that Marina Coast has doubled its population almost by adding. This has been done for quite a while. I think you're kicking the can down the road, and I don't think it's quite fair.
Okay, thank you. Chai?
Hey, don't show anybody else that wants to speak. Again, actually I have one more. Melody Chrislock.
All righty.
Go ahead and speak.
There. Okay, I wasn't unmuted. It looks like you have a process in place from what the discussion I'm hearing, and it sounds like the numbers have been justified and verified. So I'm just wondering, on what real grounds are you denying Marina their third vote? This is sounding, the people that are commenting are, a lot of them, are obviously have a political agenda here. But Marina's been trying to get this vote for months. And now you're saying you should deny it for another year? This just doesn't seem fair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Chai, I just got a note that Eric got kicked off of Zoom and he tried to get back in, and they're saying that there's only 100 connections and it's already maxed out.
No, actually the Zoom webinar has up to 300. I'm going to have someone call him right now.
Okay, he said he's going to keep trying to get back in.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but okay. No more public?
Yes. Kathy Biala.
Okay.
Go ahead, Ms. Biala.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to reinforce with what the chair just said. Some folks are trying to come in on the call, and I wonder, I want to ask the attorney if this creates a problem with a public meeting when people who wish to speak, who wish to join the meeting, are no longer able to do this. I think we need to pause and get some consultation on this, because people are trying to get on and they cannot enter the meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
We're having our IT staff look into it. I'm showing that there's 107 attendees, and according to the webinar, there's up to 300.
Okay.
We're already over 100, 107. We're actually going to go ahead and our staff is going to try to get on as well.
Okay, let me check it out.
Is there any reason, this is Rob, is there any reason that you can understand or that's apparent to you why people can't get on?
No, actually, Rob, I don't.
Yeah, okay.
All right. Let's call for the vote.
Okay, I've got a question beforehand. This is for Paul and Rob, because we haven't had a staff report on this issue at all, and we haven't really had it vetted out by our staff, as far as I know. So my question is, it clearly says in the JPA document that it's either the Department of Finance numbers or it's the census numbers. It says or. You can't add them together. So do they have, is there complete 35,000 verified by Department of Finance?
Well, I'd have to say that language which says it's either the census or the Department of Finance.
It's clear. That's exactly
yeah.
what it says.
When it says or, that doesn't mean it can be only one or the other. There's nothing in there that indicates that it's exclusive. In this case, you do have, and I think you're correct if you probably noted that the staff, the presentation and the attachments by Marina Coast consist of I can't remember, there's number 9 enclosures, and I think the enclosures that are pertinent are number 5 through 9, and several of those, 4 of those, I believe, relate to census updates. They're from the U.S. Census, and they are updates, and I can't remember the figure that's referenced on it. And they have the maps. That includes the maps, and they refer to the United States Census, and they are an update. They're a data census. So that's where those figures come from. And then the final figure, or one of the figures, actually comes from, it's a chart that comes from the Department of Finance. So it's a combination of the two, and you have to sort through those two. Now the figures that Tom's put up on the, I'm gonna say this, when Paul and I looked at all this, the letter that was provided initially, and this letter as it still stands, this letter is talking about Fort Ord military housing, and this is as opposed to the Ord community housing. And so there's the Ord community housing. So this is the figure then. I think this comes from, is this the Department of Finance figure?
Rob,
I'll let Tom
this
explain.
is the letter from the Department.
Better than I can.
Yeah, this is the letter from the Department. This is the original letter from the Department of Finance, February 12th. And what they counted up was everything in our service area, which includes the Ord military community and the portion of Fort Ord within Seaside city boundaries, total of 36,661. Rob Wellington raised the question as a consequence of a term in the JPA agreement saying that the Ord military community should not be counted. So we went back to the Department of Finance, and they sent us an email after they counted up what was in the Ord military community. And this is what they told us: 3,083 in the Ord military community, and the remainder is 33,578. And I show the calculation right down here in the right that they gave us. This still, however, includes the portion of the former Fort Ord that lies within the city of Seaside. And while there's nothing in the JPA agreement that specifically covers how those should be counted and whether or not they should be credited to Seaside, we went ahead and looked at the actual census tracts for that portion of the former Fort Ord that is covered by Seaside, and I'm going down to those maps so you can see what those census tracts are. By the way, in answer to Rudy's question, what happens to Seaside if they can no longer count the portion of Seaside on the former Fort Ord? And while technically that wasn't our responsibility to figure out what happens to another member's votes, I went ahead and took a look at that. And even only counting these 6 census tracts, which are the portion of Seaside not on the former Fort Ord, They have been above 25,000 since 2010 or earlier. I didn't look back to the year 2000 census, but both the 2010 census and the 2018 Census Bureau estimate puts their population above 25,000. So nothing, in answer to Rudy's question, nothing happens to them. They still have the same number of votes. In the meantime, what happens if we subtract from the Department of Finance figure everything in this census tract, which you'll note encompasses all of Fort Ord State Beach, all of the national monuments, in fact, almost the entirety of the southern 3/4 of the former Fort Ord is in this census tract. And there is another census tract that straddles the Seaside and Marina boundary, as shown here. This is the boundary of Seaside. The green boundary is the former Fort Ord boundary. So all of this in here is Seaside on the former Fort Ord, completely encompassed within Census Tract 141.07 and 141.04. And I note that 141.04 also includes some population in Marina. I added up these two numbers, which encompass all of the Ord military community, a small portion of Marina, and all exactly of Seaside on the former Fort Ord, and subtracted them from that original number given to us of 36,661. Right? The total, this is from the Census Bureau's data site called data.census.gov, which not only includes the estimate for tract 141.04 and the estimate for 141.07, but also, since this is the 2018 American Community Survey, it includes the margin of error plus or minus on these estimates. So I took the estimates, added the plus side of the margin of error in both cases. That's what you see here. That yielded 10,439, and
Mr. Chair,
that from
how long is this going to go on?
36,651. So I'm almost done, Director Phillips. So the net is still above 25,000, even though this 10,000 is an overestimate of the population in Seaside on the former Fort Ord and in the Ord military community. Just last couple of comments. We did annex 8 months ago. We did pay the Department of Finance $1,000 for that original estimate of 36,661. Nobody was trying to help us when you knew that we'd annexed. We weren't hearing any calls for trying to redo everybody's numbers. And we've been working on this since at least February, and actually before that, trying to figure out what we needed to provide to staff to show them what was going on. So a lot of arguments that we've heard from various folks on various topics having nothing to do with this simple contract issue. It's a contract issue. We believe it's our right. You're either going to approve it or not.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
We have a long agenda. I call for the question.
All righty.
There's a few folks that have their hands up already, so I would just ask that if folks already have their hand up, could we?
Okay, if we can get this off the screen, then I can manipulate and see the hands.
And then Ron, can I make an announcement?
Yes.
There was a glitch with the phone. It's not working. So everybody that wasn't able to get on should be able to get on. We've tested it and it's working.
It's working. Okay.
So if anyone, those people can try again.
Okay. Any board comments? Jason, you're up first.
Yes, thank you. And I request that people mute their their phones or whatever while the rest of us are speaking. I believe it may be Marianne Carbone might be coming through, but I would really appreciate it if we get these mutes. Yeah, it's gonna be distracting. Thank you.
Okay, great. Tyler?
Okay. Yeah. So basically, the question is not whether Marina has 3 votes. Clearly, by our own bylaws, Marina has 3 votes. They've proved that they have a population per the JPA agreement, so they have the 3 votes. The question is, will the board recognize that they have the 3 votes, or will they disenfranchise? Will they act to disenfranchise residents of Marina? There were a lot of great ideas tonight on ways we can look at this in the future, but that's not what we're dealing with. The future, we're dealing with a framework right now that we are all working within, and Marina Coast has worked within that framework and proven to us, without a doubt, they have a 3rd vote. Now the question is, do we recognize it or do we disenfranchise them? It's pretty straightforward.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Tyler, you got something?
Yeah, so I did just want to follow up on a few of the comments. The 2 main things that I heard to folks that oppose us moving forward with taking action was that there are other members, part of Monterey One Water, that feel that they need to have a change in their allocation. And then in regards to the process. And so I would say first that, again, if another member of this agency would like a change in their allocation, they're entitled to go through the process just like Marina Coast has appeared to do since February. And I actually applaud staff for taking the time to go through a thorough process to ensure that they had all the information that they needed before they put it on the agenda. So it's been months now since Marina Coast has determined that they have earned an additional vote. And so, I mean, if we look at it from a I guess, a justice perspective, there's been all these months where they could have voted on things with their additional vote, and it could have changed the impact of decisions that we've made as a board at their cost, and the citizens that they represent. And then just in regards to the process, again, and just repeating what Jason said, if we want to change the process, we can absolutely do that. But we do have a process now. We don't even know if this board is in agreement about changing the process. That's not what's in front of us today. So it's great that there's a lot of concern and dialogue in regards to the need for us to look at maybe making some of those changes. And I think that that's something that we can agendize for a future discussion, but that's not the decision in front of us today, nor is it fair to Marina Coast to not give them their allocation based off of our current process because we think the process should be changed. I also heard an argument around the fact that Salinas should have additional allocation. And again, our current process, from the slide that was up earlier in regards to how many votes you get based off of your population, Salinas is above the max level. So even if Salinas grew by double, they're not going to get additional votes. They're at 6, which 6 right now, according to our process, is the max votes that any agency, participating agency could have. And then just in regards to the SAR, this is my last comment. You know, unfortunately, this is the circumstance. Yes, this is an issue that's presented in front of us today, happens to be right before a critical vote. And if you're against the SCIR, then this makes you nervous that potentially Marina Coast could use that vote to leverage something in their favor. If you're for it, so it can go either way is my point. And I think at the end of the day, the argument that I'm making is that it's about fairness. And our process right now is established in a way that gives Marina Coast the authority to have the additional vote. And it would be an injustice and a disservice to the community for Marina Coast to not have the correct representation as we make one more vote on this board.
Okay, thank you, Tyler. John Gagliotti?
Yeah, I mean, I just come back and I love that we're all saying fairness and equity, and I would just ask that we have the evidence that's put before us, just like we would at any other time, verified independently, have staff put it in a staff report, present it to us, and then we can take an action on it. That's the way we normally do this. We're kind of asking for some of this information came in after the existing staff report. It came in last night. So, I mean, just in terms of staying standard and maintaining our process the way it is, let's just go ahead and do that. I mean, we can even do it in the next meeting. I don't see where that would be so outlandish to ask for staff to take a look at this and have it independently verified and bring it back to us with a recommendation.
Okay, thank you. All right, so it's time to call for the vote. All right, roll call vote. Chai?
Sure. And then just to confirm, I have a motion by Member Moore and a second by Member Williamson. Rhonda?
No.
Castroville?
No.
County of Monterey?
No.
Delray Oaks?
No.
Marina Coast?
Yes.
Monterey?
Yes.
Pacific Grove?
No.
Salinas?
We lose Gloria?
Salinas?
Maybe she doesn't know she's muted.
Let's see if she's still on.
Can you see? I am.
There you go. Yeah.
No.
Okay, thank you, Gloria.
Sand City?
No.
Seaside?
Yes.
Okay. Motion fails. 7 noes, 3 ayes.
Okay, thank you, Chai. Okay, we'll move on to 7B. Who's going to do this, Jerry?
That's me. Yes, that's me. Good
Okay.
evening. Good evening, Board Chair Stefani and board members. I will be discussing the capital improvement project, fire suppression tank modifications project regarding rejecting the bids. Our administration building at our regional treatment plant is protected by a fire sprinkler system where there are 2 welded steel tanks that provide water to the fire sprinkler system with a minimum total water storage capacity of 20,000 gallons. The tanks were to be upgraded in fiscal year 2015, 2016 to meet the latest seismic code and NFPA 22 document. The project went out to bid in 2015. The bids came in too high. We rejected the bids and placed the project on the shelf for construction in a future fiscal year. In the meantime, tanks continue to corrode and develop holes, which reduce the storage capacity to well below the minimum required for fire protection. Currently, we are renting a temporary water storage tank to supply the necessary water to protect the admin building. And we decided to update the 2015 bid documents this year to meet the latest seismic code and NFPA 22 document and proceed with the project bid phase. Again, the project went out to bid in February this year. We had a mandatory job walk that was attended by 6 potential bidders, and we received 4 bids in March, ranging from $445,000 to $650,000. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic that we're in, there may not be sufficient funds available in the budget through fiscal year 2020-21 to fund this project because of the increased delinquencies and reduced revenue. Staff recommends rejecting all bids at this time. The agency will continue to rent the temporary water storage tank at a cost of approximately $192 per week until sufficient money is available to rebid the project. The recommended action is that the board reject all bids for the construction contract for capital improvement project fire suppression tank modifications project. Now I open up to any questions that you have.
Okay, thank you, Jerry. Questions from the board?
This is John. I have one question. We covered this in the Recycle Water Committee, and I totally understand why I do. I just want to make the point, though, that the reason that we're having to do this is because we are in financial straits. So I just want that point to be made clear.
Okay. Any other board members?
Yeah, I agree. That has nothing to do with the virus. I mean, we just didn't have the money in the budget for it, and so we're having to rent it, unfortunately. But that's the state of our financials. So I don't think we have any choice but to deny the bids.
Okay. Okay, I don't see any other board members. Jason, you got something?
Your Honor, I'll move approval. This is Nick Smith.
Okay.
Second.
I'll second.
Okay, we got a second. We need to go to the public.
If there's any members of the public that want to speak, please raise your hand via the Zoom feature or press *9 on your cell phone. I'm not seeing anyone.
Okay, great. Let's go ahead and take a roll call vote.
Rhonda?
Yes.
Yes.
County of Monterey?
Aye.
Delray Oaks?
Aye.
Marina Coast?
Yes.
Monterey?
Yes.
Pacific Grove?
Yes.
Salinas? Salinas?
Did you hear me? Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
City?
Yes.
Seaside?
All right.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to 7C. Paul's up.
Thank you, Ron.
Mhm.
So I think we all know that this item is to consider certification of the final supplemental environmental impact report for the proposed modifications to the Pure Water Monterey project, or the backup expansion, and conditional project approval. So I'm going to give a brief introduction, and then I was going to ask Allison Imamura, who is an associate engineer with M1W. Previous to that, she was with Denise Duffy working on EIRs, to do a little background as well. And then also Barbara Schuchman, who is our CEQA specific attorney with Perkins Coie, to be part of the presentation. So with that, we'll make it relatively quick. I think, are aware of this project and this SEIR. The initial Pure Water Monterey EIR was certified by this board back in October 2015. The supplemental EIR is building on that already approved EIR. In March of last year, 2019, this board approved moving forward with the environmental documentation in conjunction with the Water Management District for $1 million. In addition, we have some assets for California American Water within the SEIR, and they have contributed up at this point $350,000 for that effort. The original agreement with the Water Management District is that they pay 3/4 of our $1 million expense. And if the project were not to move forward, that we would be reimbursed our $250,000 contribution over a 5-year period. So what you have before you are specifically 2 resolutions, one to certify the final SEIR, and one to conditionally approve the project. What I tried to do with those 2 specific resolutions is address what the board has been stating for the past year, whether that be with your resolution, I think it was 2019-19, saying that this is a backup project if the desal project were to falter. The second resolution is very specific, saying that the board has discretion on if or when this project ever moves forward. Truly, the first resolution is just certifying the environmental document and therefore we will not be spending additional resources or funds move this project forward, is effectively shelved in a backup position. Like I mentioned, the resolutions were written that way specifically to address the board's concerns that this stay a backup project as identified back in 2019. So I'm just looking through some of the notes here. We have done a fair amount of outreach through this entire process. Certainly on the peninsula as well as in the valley, meeting with our friends at the Water Resources Agency a number of times, 6 to 8. Farm Bureau, we've done a couple presentations. We've met with the city of Salinas 3 times just to keep everyone up to speed on what we are doing, as well as growers, shippers. We did a presentation once. So we have tried to be as open on this topic as possible. Once again, this is an environmental impact report, so hopefully we look at it through that lens and whether it can stand on its own for environmental impacts, mitigation, and monitoring as you have been provided. It is a really thick document and there's a lot of information in it. So I certainly would like Allison and Barbara to talk a little bit and try to simplify the salient points on this item. So Allison, with that.
So hopefully you can hear me good. Good evening, Chair Stefani and members of the board. I'm going to present as briefly as possible an overview of the project. I'm going to talk about the final SEIR, including some of the issues related to environmental impacts. I'm going to give an overview very briefly of the responses to comments that were prepared and presented in the final supplemental EIR. And then I'll be available to answer questions. Just as a note before I start, there was quite a bit of supplemental information received since the staff report was prepared last week. We also, the staff worked together, M1W staff worked together to put some supplemental information together to respond to one of the first letters that we received last week from Latham and Watkins representing California American Water Company. So there is a document in the board packet that has a response to that letter. So the project that was studied in the supplemental EIR would expand the Pure Water Monterey project. It would add additional equipment and facilities into the existing advanced water purification site at the regional treatment plant in order to increase the peak capacity from 5 million gallons per day to 7.6 million gallons per day. The project would add additional product water conveyance facilities, and it would also add and relocate some injection and monitoring well facilities and pipelines connecting those and a backflush basin. It would also enable California American Water to build new potable water extraction wells and delivery facilities, including up to 4 new extraction wells, conveyance pipelines, and treatment facilities. So briefly, most of the environmental impacts associated with expanding the Pure Water Monterey project relate to project construction. The construction activity would occur at or near some of the same sites as was originally envisioned for the approved project. And not surprisingly, then the supplemental EIR concludes that all but one of the environmental impacts from construction would be the same as those impacts that were identified for the approved project. The board has already adopted mitigation measures, and those same or similar mitigation measures would also apply to the construction aspects of expanding the Pure Water Monterey project. And those impacts, there were feasible mitigation measures available to reduce those construction impacts to a less than significant level. And I'll talk briefly that in the final supplemental EIR, there will be enhancements to the mitigation based on comments received. The final supplemental EIR also identifies that one of the new construction impacts that was identified was found to be not able to be reduced to a less than significant level, similar to the original project. However, for a new project component, the California American Water extraction wells EW3 and those in EW4, which were located at the same location as 2 new wells that were proposed as part of the Monterey Peninsula Water Supply Project. And so that associated final environmental impact statement, environmental impact report for the Monterey Peninsula Water Supply Project also found that same significant and unavoidable construction impact. Operation of the expansion project would also be very similar to the operation of the original Pure Water Monterey project, the approved project. The same source waters would be used, the main difference being that more product water would be produced and delivered to the seaside groundwater basin. And as with the construction impacts, the final supplemental EIR finds that almost all the operational impacts would be the same as those impacts of the approved project. Again, similarly, the board has already adopted mitigation measures, and those mitigation measures would also apply to the expanded project and would reduce those impacts to a less than significant level. The EIR, that supplemental EIR did identify one new operational impact that cannot be reduced to a less than significant level. That impact is related to growth inducement and the indirect impacts of new growth. Because the expansion project would be capable of producing more than what is needed to replace the Carmel River diversions, it would induce more growth in the region than was anticipated for the base approved project. This same impact was also disclosed in the final EIR-EIS for the water supply project, even though the project would create more water than the expanded Pure Water Monterey project. In summary, if implemented as a backup to the Monterey Peninsula Water Supply Project, the expansion project would result in 2 of the same significant and unavoidable impacts as the Monterey Peninsula Water Supply Project: nighttime noise during construction of CalAm wells and growth inducement and direct impacts. Otherwise, the construction and operation of the expansion project would result in the same environmental impacts as construction and operation of the original project, and those impacts would be addressed in the same way as the impacts of the original Pure Water Monterey project. So briefly, the overview of the responses to comments. The draft supplemental EIR includes about 54 comment letters and emails that were received on the draft supplemental. Staff worked closely with the consultant team to respond to every one of these letters. The document also contains responses to oral comments received at the public hearing. Staff and consultants have incorporated changes that were recommended by the commenting agencies and members of the public. And where we couldn't make a change to respond, we explained why. CEQA requires a good faith effort to respond to comments, and it doesn't require perfection. The responses acknowledge that reasonable people can disagree about technical information and studies that go into a supplemental EIR. CEQA allows for the differences of opinion, and they do not render an EIR inadequate. The purpose of the CEQA document is to disclose these disagreements and to resolve them as best we can, given the information that's in front of us. In this case, the physical environmental impacts from constructing and operating the expansion project would be the same regardless of which set of experts is correct. One of the key comments has been that we've been receiving even up to this date is concerns about the Castroville Seawater Intrusion Project and the yields that we can achieve for that project. The approved Pure Water Monterey project with the proposed modifications would still increase the CSIP yields according to the technical analysis in the supplemental EIR. Appendix I was the basis for the physical environmental impact analysis, and new information in the final supplemental EIR, including Appendix M, did not change those conclusions. And with that, I'll turn it over to Barbara Schussman, our CEQA attorney, who's going to address 2 other specific comments that we've been receiving: water supply and cumulative impacts, and I'll be here to answer questions if anyone has any.
Thank you, Allison. Good evening, Chair Stefani and members of the board. One of the key issues that were raised in comment letters pertain to water supply. Would there be sufficient water available to serve the project? And would the project be able to accommodate long-term demand? Both of these issues are important to the board's decision as to whether to pursue the project further in the future. But as I'll explain, resolution of these issues is not particularly relevant to the environmental impacts of the project under CEQA. Turning to the first issue, will there be sufficient source water available for the expansion project? The supplemental SEIR, the supplemental EIR determines, as it must, that there would be enough source water available for the project. It does this to ensure that the maximum capacity of the project is analyzed in the SEIR. In that way, all of the impacts of operating the project are revealed. There were some new technical information provided in the SEIR, in particular, a source water technical memorandum prepared by M1W. That document looked at 4 different scenarios for future water availability. Under all 4 scenarios, the technical memorandum determines that there would be sufficient source water available. As a result, the impacts of the expansion project would be identical under all 4 scenarios. The project would operate at its full capacity. The difference between the scenarios is simply how much additional leftover wastewater would be discharged to the ocean or used for unrelated projects, projects that are not related to the expansion project. The source water information was provided to respond to numerous comments on the draft SEIR. However, as Allison noted, that new technical information does not change any of the conclusions in the SEIR about the environmental impacts of the project. There's a related question: what happens if there is not sufficient source water available for the project? In that case, from an environmental impact perspective, the impacts of the project would simply—
If you're, I don't know, you should be able to share it without him making you the co-host. This is Tina.
Okay, I just made you host. I don't know how to make you co-host. So
right.
Go for it, Eric. I think you've got the reins.
Okay, I'll do my best here.
And if I unmake you the co-host because I need to be the host, I'll let you know before I do that.
Okay.
So this is Eric Frost. Eric is our director of our finance department for the city of Marina.
Are you seeing a
yes.
Good.
We are.
Progress. Okay.
So,
thank you, Mayor and residents. We're glad that you're here today, and we like to see the young citizens too participating. What I have here is something that we gave to council modified to show you what the program is. There are actually 2 programs that are